Hey guys, this is Fountainhead. Speaking to you from my home studio here in Berlin, the Fountainhead HQ. And I'm looking forward to answer all of your questions today. The questions that you sent me on Facebook, Twitter, on my email, and so on and so forth. I'm a little bit under the weather, so to speak. Have been battling the flu for a couple of days, but with enough coffee, that's not gonna be an issue, is it? So let's go. Okay, so first one. What is your approach on songwriting? Where do you start when you compose a song? Now, if I'm writing my own music, I always have a concept. I always have something I want to express, and if I don't start actually writing and working on the actual song and the musical parts until I can hear the whole thing in my head. So I have to have this mental image of the finished song or the finished product. So then, if I do have that, if I thought about it enough, and if I know exactly what I'm going for, then I start, just choosing the right colors, the right musical colors from the palette to illustrate what I'm going for, what I want to do. So it's more comparing this mental image to what I already have, then making adjustments and keep adding stuff that will, make the two align as much as possible. And then for other projects like Pitts Miniman, which I just worked on again, this is something else. You have different people involved, different modes of songwriting, different approaches. Sometimes that involves just having a drum beat and then jamming on it for hours until you come up with something that you like the usual stuff. But that being said, for my own music, and even the track that I wrote for the new Obscura album, just as a recent example, all of those things, I have to have a concept. I have to know what I'm going to do in advance. Where did the name Fountainhead come from? I've been using that name as a sort of a stage name or alias since I was a teenager, basically. And I read it somewhere. I don't know. I can't even remember. A long, long time ago, and it just made sense for me. It was a cool term, cool name, and I obviously I was aware of other guitar players using aliases like Buckethead and Bumblefoot. So it kind of fell right in line and made sense. And it sounded so much better than my very German last name, Geldschläger. Which, for most people outside of Germany is kind of an obstacle. So, I always just, liked using that instead of my real name. Made a lot of things just much easier. And then later on, only much later, I became aware of the novel The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, which is probably what 99% of people associate with the name Fountainhead. And yeah, of course, I read it, and I read the book, and there was a time in my life where that was pretty important for me, where I felt some sort of connection with the ideas and characters in the book. But it was a long time ago. People change and perspectives change. So I wouldn't want to be associated with that sort of stuff today. Not saying anything bad about it, just, it had me using Fountainhead doesn't really have anything to do with Ayn Rand and the book The Fountainhead. As a composer, who are your biggest influences? Oh wow, that's actually kind of a difficult question because I've never really thought about there being like two or three composers who I take cues from and who are I think are more influential and more important to me than others, because I just, I listen to everything. I soak it all up. I'm into mode selector as well as I'm into Wagner. I'm into Holdsworth as much as I'm into Terry Riley, or I may be into the fucking B-52s as much as I'm into Dream Theater. So really, I listen to everything and I try to be as open as possible. So there's not really, a box of people I'm looking for inspiration in, like, who I think are composers more than anything else. Band people can be composers too, and improvising musicians are composers too. They just compose on the spot. So Charlie Parker was a brilliant composer. And I think Square Pusher is a brilliant composer. So yeah, there are a couple of maybe there are a couple of things that are more important than others when it comes to Fountainhead, at least. Um, as I mentioned, Square Pusher, I'm a huge fan. King Crimson is one of the biggest influences, I guess, in terms of musical vocabulary. I used to be very into Dream Theater when I was younger, not so much anymore. Lots of electronic music. Avex Twin, I love Avex Twin. Um, what else? Yeah, classical music. You know, Mostly minimalist composers, Riley, Cage, stuff like that. Um, there's a Japanese composer that was one of the first ones I kind of, really liked and tried to emulate in my own little way. Who's called Joe Hisaishi. He did a lot of great film music. Um, yeah, stuff like that, all kinds of stuff. I'd have to, look into my record collection and see. Oh yeah, this and that. I used to be into one. I think one of the earliest records I can remember, which really made me go, "Oh wow, this is so awesome. This is what I wanna. This is the kind of music I wanna play." Was actually the Blade Runner soundtrack by Vangelis, which is like the only thing I really like of Vangelis ever. But I think that's amazing. Like these electronic soundscapes, but still having very intimate sounding natural instruments like the saxophone or guitar, and then these pieces of dialogue drifting in and out, making a very immersive listening experience. That was a huge influence on me. Where do you find inspiration to write? Um, well, I usually don't lack inspiration to write because I kind of have a very turbulent life. Um, that's always been the case. So my main inspiration to write music has always been my personal experiences and my personal life. All the good and bad stuff. I've been through so much shit experiences, not only in the music business but personally as well. It made perfect cannon fodder for writing emotional music, basically. And I could never. I mean, I write all the time, but I could never do like two Fountainhead releases a year, just because for that particular project, all of the song ideas and you know the starting points for the tunes came from very difficult life changing experiences. So I'm kind of like, it's kind of like self therapy, right? Instead of going out and shooting somebody in the face, I would sit down and write a Fountainhead piece. It may not always be obvious while listening, but like like on the first one, like each song basically comes from a very um, severe life and death situation, and kind of channel that into music, and on a new one as well. So that's kind of my vehicle for, taking some of the most difficult and life changing experiences, and kind of making sense of it through using as a tool for for creating art. Yeah, and in the process, maybe getting over it, getting a new perspective on it, and just using it for something good instead of something negative, basically. And um that's just for this particular project. Like, when I get hired to maybe co-write with someone else, obviously I'm not gonna go in and say, hey, you know what, I've been in the hospital last year and almost died, and this is what I want to write about. No, obviously you're gonna find common ground first and foremost musically, and compare influences, compare your background, and then maybe write something out of your based on your playing styles, and just create something by mixing up the two different musical worlds, and then see where it takes you. But yes, for me, for Fountainhead, inspiration to write, the number one inspiration has always been my personal life, rather than the music I listen to. Okay, what musicians, bands, or records influenced you on picking up a fretless guitar? That's really easy to answer. Just one, Bumblefoot. I've been a massive fan of his since day one, basically. Most of you may know him as the lead guitar player for Guns N' Roses, um, but he's been putting out amazing solo records since the early '90s. Um, and when the internet came along, that he was one of the first people I discovered um, online. And I think in the mid '90s or late '90s, he started using fretless guitars a lot. So I got the idea from that. And the story goes that I, I was playing one of my very first gigs, and I've been using my old Ibanez Jam 555, like the cheapest one they've got. And by the third song, I had been abusing the vibrato bar that much that the guitar actually exploded into my face on stage. Like the whole bar came off, like the whole vibrato system. So the guitar was fucked. And I thought, oh, okay, what am I gonna do with this? I don't have that many guitars, so I can't just throw it away. I have it repaired, but I want to do something cool with it. And I thought, oh, maybe a MIDI pickup, but that proved to be pretty expensive. So I thought, okay, well, let's just rip out the frets, fill up the holes with the cheapest possible wood I can get, and then put glue on top, set up a new cheap fixed bricks, and then let's see what happens. And yeah, and that was my entry into fretless guitar. At first, it was horrible, and I played horrible. But over the years, it just became an very important part of what I do, and yeah, that's it. I know there are a lot of more people nowadays experimenting with fretless guitars, and lots of great guitar players over the years, have used it here and there. I know that Steve Vai used it on a couple of little things. You have Pat Metheny and so on and so forth, and a lot of other guys as well. But for me, Bumblefoot was the guy.